Hello friends, my name is Jessica and I am an ASHA certified speech and language pathologist, and I am obsessed with learning about all things social communication. I am also obsessed with teaching others about them, which is why we're here on YouTube. Yay! So today I want to talk to you about nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication can be really tricky to teach. Most of us have learned these skills naturally, so identifying what they are and how to break them down and teach them in a strategic way can actually be quite challenging. So today we are going to talk about some ways that we can teach our students about nonverbal communication and nonverbal language. Now, first I'm going to talk to you a little bit about nonverbal communication. There are 7 or 8-ish types of nonverbal communication. They are facial expressions, body language, gestures, tone of voice, touch, eye contact, and personal space. Okay? You like those gestures? I just made them up on the fly. All right, so those are the 7 areas of nonverbal communication. I said 8 because personal hygiene or personal appearance, can also be considered a type of nonverbal communication. How we are choosing to appear physically does communicate a lot about us. Okay, so let's break this down a minute. And now you know the different kinds of nonverbal communication. Let's talk about what nonverbal communication is. It is any kind of communication that occurs without words. It is not verbal, right? See how that works? So like I said, it includes the following areas: facial expressions, body language, gestures, tone of voice, touch, eye contact, personal space, and physical appearance, if you want to include that. It is very common for individuals to struggle with nonverbal communication. If your child has been diagnosed with autism, that means, or your student, that means that they have some trouble understanding and using nonverbal communication. So the skill is extremely important to teach and learn, because learning how to understand nonverbal communication helps us to interact socially with others, and it helps us to communicate better with others. Okay, so now we're going to break down each of these 7 or 8 sections of nonverbal communication. We're going to break them down, we're going to talk about them, we're going to define them, and I'm going to give you some ideas on how you can teach your student to understand each of these different kinds of nonverbal communication. So the first one we're going to talk about is facial expressions. I am looking off my computer. If you keep seeing my eyes dart away, full disclosure, I need my notes because I want this to be good and helpful for you. And I can't do that if I'm doing this all by memory. So I hope you understand. Also, before we dive in and I go any further, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time to learn something new that will hopefully help you teach your students a skill that they're struggling with. That is just absolutely awesome and amazing, and I thank you for choosing to spend your time with me. So before I go any further, if you've not already gotten something to take notes with, I would really recommend getting some pen and some paper and jotting down some things to help you remember what we're talking about. Okay, so let's jump in. The first type of nonverbal communication we're going to talk about is facial expressions. Right? There are 6 main facial expressions that people make. Now, each facial expression is related to an emotion. Each type of facial expression has a very specific characteristics that will help you know what emotion the person is feeling. Okay? So let's think about this. We're going to break it down a little bit more. There are 6 types of facial expressions: happy, sad, angry, fear, disgust, and surprised. Scientists tell us that these are the basic emotions that we all experience. Every other emotion is a root or a different form of these basic emotions. So our facial expressions, We can say we're happy, we're sad, we're angry, we're scared, we're disgusted, we're surprised, okay? Each of these 6 basic emotions have very distinct characteristics of the face, okay? So going back through them. When you feel happy, you have a wide smile, an open mouth. You can see some teeth. You can see wrinkles around the eyes, and the cheeks are raised, and the eyes are slightly squinted. Did you see all those in my face? Can you see them? Can you see them? Can you see my wrinkles? My high raised cheeks? My teeth? My smile? I'm happy. I'm happy to be here. So that is happy. Second facial expression that we can see is sad. Okay? The corners of the lips are pointed down. The inner eyebrows are raised up. My eyebrows apparently don't move like that. But you know a sad face when you see one. Okay, next. Angry. There's tension in the face. There's these closed V-shaped eyebrows. The mouth, if the mouth is open, it's square-shaped. Square-shaped, if you couldn't understand that. If the mouth is closed, there's tightness in the chin and jaws. Do you see all those characteristics? All right, fear. Slanted and raised eyebrows. Eyes are open very wide. Ooh, just saw a bug crawl across my table. I don't know. Right? You know what fear looks like. Disgust. A wrinkled nose. Lowered eyebrows. The mouth is tight and curved downward, and the upper lips go up. Bug went across my table. Yuck. A bug really didn't go across my table just now. I'm just using that as an example. And last is surprised. Raised and curved eyebrows. Horizontal wrinkles on the forehead. Open lips. Dropped jaw. Eyes open wide. You see my wrinkles? Horizontal. Eyes. Mouth. I have a surprised face. So like I said, I start by teaching my students these physical characteristics to look for when trying to interpret a facial expression. Now, an interesting tip is students with autism, we know that they struggle with eye contact. So part of the reason that they struggle with understanding emotions is because they are focusing on this lower third of the face. So a lot of these cues, like we talked about, the horizontal wrinkles or this wrinkles around my eyes, those are occurring in the top third of my face. So a child or individual who does not focus on this top third is missing a lot of cues that's going to help them learn to read and understand facial expressions. So to teach facial expressions, to teach my students how to understand them, I go over each of those definitions, model them like I did for you, and they try and draw them so that they're having, an interactive process. And then we'll probably look at maybe some video clips or some pictures or things to talk about those basic facial expressions. Again, really focus on this top third of the face because we're getting a lot of cues there that if a child is not looking at somebody's eyes or their top third of the face, they're going to miss those cues. Now, we know there are more emotions beyond happy, sad, mad, disgust, surprised, and angry. But we talk about these different, more complex emotions and how the same facial expressions are generally going to be used to convey those complex emotions. So what we will do is I'll give them a list of some words. For example, nervous, satisfied, amused, annoyed, love, revulsion. We're going to target, first of all, some really good vocabulary words, but we're going to talk about what basic emotion these complex emotions are the most like. And then talk about kind of how the face is going to model those similar facial expressions for the complex emotions as they do the basic emotions. All right, gestures. Gestures are movements that we make with our bodies that are used to communicate a message. We most frequently use our hands to gesture, but other parts of the bodies can be used as well. Now, there are 3 types of gestures. Gestures that indicate nervousness, such as fidgeting with objects, or my personal is playing with my hair. Gestures with a specific meaning, such as a thumbs up. We know that means good job. It has a meaning. And gestures that go with a verbal message, such as me using my hands as I'm talking and telling you a story. So when I'm teaching these, I focus mostly on teaching gestures with a specific meaning. Think of these like gestures as a vocabulary word. We will talk about different kinds of gestures and then we will define it. For example, we will talk about the beckoning gesture and we'll talk about what it means. It means come here. We'll talk about the talking gesture. What does that mean? It means she's talking and she needs to be quiet because I'm tired of it. Or we'll talk about a fist bump. Or we'll talk about the hitchhiking thumb, how that's different than a thumbs up, right? Gestures like vocabulary words. We teach gestures and I teach their meanings so that my students are able to see someone using a gesture and define it like they would a vocabulary word. In my nonverbal communication teaching guide, I have a whole list of different gestures that you can use to know some gestures to teach. You can also find lists on the internet if you're wanting to kind of DIY it yourself. All right, moving right along to touch. I believe that was my gesture I used in the beginning. Touching someone is when you physically touch another person. There are 4 different kinds of touching. There's actually 5, but one of them's inappropriate, so we're not going to talk about it here. There are 4 different kinds of touch. Functional, professional, social, polite, friendship, warmth, and love, intimacy. Okay, let's talk about what each of these are. A functional professional touch is the touching that occurs when a professional must touch you to do his or her job. For example, the dentist has to touch your mouth. The hair lady has to touch my hair. It's professional. I'm expecting her to touch me, and she's doing it to do her job. Second one is social polite, and this is touching that occurs in social routines. They're usually very brief, and let's see, sorry, I lost my spot. And they include things like a handshake, a pat on the back, or a quick side hug. They're not gonna last very long. We're just being polite. I'm gonna shake your hand and then we're done touching. Number 3 is friendship or warmth. And this is touching that occurs between 2 people who are familiar with one another. Now, when you teach this, or you need to be very careful because this type of touch can easily be confused with the next type, which is love, intimacy. So you need to make sure that your level of touch in this stage matches your partner, so that you don't make that other person uncomfortable. Or you need to teach your student to make sure their level of touch matches their partner's so they don't make somebody uncomfortable. So friendship, warmth touching includes things like longer hugs, putting your arms around the shoulders of somebody, or holding hands. Well, holding hands can also be in love, intimacy. So if you're a good friend, you might give them a longer hug. But if I hug you too long, now I'm thinking, well, are we friends, or is this like you being intimate with me? So it's kind of that in between of social, polite, and intimacy. So the 4th one is love, intimacy, and this occurs between 2 people who are very close. This includes family, very close friends, and significant others. You need to teach your students to be very careful to use these touches with the appropriate people. Holding hands and touching someone's hair and cuddling are all examples of love, intimacy, touching. So to teach this kind of nonverbal communication, touch, we just make a graph and we talk about different, I make 4 different squares One is functional professional, one's social polite, friendship, warmth, and love, intimacy. And we make a list of the people who I would expect a functional professional touch with, who I could expect a love, intimacy touch with, who would be a good person to use friendship, warmth touch with, who should I use a social polite touch with. So we just sort people that we know into the different categories of appropriate ways to touch them. Okay, next nonverbal communication is proxemics, aka personal space. So if somebody is too close to you, they're in your personal space, and that's a type of nonverbal communication. Now, there are different kinds. There is a scientific formula for what is appropriate as far as proxemic goes. So, proxemics, commonly called personal space, is the distance between you and another person. There are 4 levels: intimate space, personal space, social space, and public space. So we'll start from the middle and we'll work our way out. Intimate space is anything that goes from touching your body to about 18 inches from yourself. This is the space where you allow people with whom you are very close. So this could be very close family members, very close friends, and significant others are probably the only people you will allow in this space. Personal space is about 18 inches to 4 feet from your body. We will often allow friends and people we like in this space. Moving out again, we have social space. This is 4 to 10 feet from your body. This space is for people we don't know well or for people with whom we have no close relationship. And then last, the biggest ring is public space, which is what it sounds like. Anything beyond 10 feet from your body where the rest of the public is. It contains strangers and people we're not comfortable with. So this is important because it lets us know how close it's appropriate to be to other people. And, like I said, if somebody gets too close to me, that makes me really uncomfortable if you're not one of my intimate people. At the same time, if you're way out here in public space, but I think we're buds, that feels a little off to me too. So to teach this, I teach my students about these definitions, and then I like to get like masking tape and we measure this out on the ground to give an idea of what these spaces look like visually. And then we'll do kind of that same activity that we did before, where we'll get the 4 squares and we will say, who are some people that I would allow in my intimate space? Who are some people I would allow in my personal space? Who are people that might be in my social space? And who are some people who would be in my public space? And we just think about our space and our personal space and how we're sharing it and where people should be within that space. Okay, the next type of nonverbal communication is whole body language. Our body language is the way we position our head and our body to send a message to the people around us. When we tilt our head to the side, it means I'm interested in what you're saying to me. If we lower our head, it means we're probably unhappy. If our head stays upright, it means we're happy and we're in a good mood, or we're in a neutral mood that is neither happy nor unhappy. If we lean our body towards someone, it means we're interested in what they have to say. And if we pull our body away from them, it means we're not comfortable speaking to that person or that maybe we don't like them. If you sit with an open posture like I am now, then it comes across as very welcoming and friendly. If you close yourself up and you sit in a closed posture, then that is closed off. It's not as welcoming and it doesn't look as friendly. So body language is also usually used with gestures and facial expressions and tone of voice, all kind of combined together to give you a clue as to what the other person is thinking. So to teach this skill, I will use video clips or maybe look at pictures from a book, and I will not do the audio if I can. Like if it's some of the Disney shorts are really good for not having audio and you can just look at the body language. But we'll look at the picture or the video clip and we'll describe the body language of the person that's in it. And then we'll talk about what do we think that body language is communicating. And we'll do that 3 or 4 times. Okay, the next type of nonverbal communication is vocalics, which we commonly refer to as tone of voice. This is how we use our voice, not our words, but our voice to convey a message. So think of the tone of voice as the background to your words. Your tone of voice is going to change a lot based on different situations. For example, you would use a different tone of voice at a football game than you would in a nice restaurant. Your voice might also sound different in different contexts when your emotions are changing. For example, your voice sounds different when you're nervous versus in a situation where you're comfortable. And it's important to consider the context of each situation when trying to understand the meaning of someone's voice. Vocal expression is also usually tied to facial expressions. They go hand in hand. So this means if somebody's face looks sad, their voice probably sounds sad too. So what I tell my students is if they have a hard time understanding the tone of voice, to also pay attention to the facial expressions and the body language to give them clues as to how the other person is feeling. Okay, so to teach vocalics or tone of voice, what I will do is I will give my students a context and a facial expression and words. And then they will practice using different tones of voice to say that word. So for example, the context could be your brother or sister borrowed your shirt and gave it back with a stain on it. The facial expression would be angry and the words would be thank you. Thank you. Same words, thank you. This time your mom gave you broccoli for dinner. You hate broccoli. Thank you. Same words again, thank you. Your dad surprised you with a new phone. Thank you. Thank you again. Someone hands you a tissue after you've been crying. Thank you. So this talks about how different situations and different scenarios are going to sound different with different tone of voice, even though the words might be exactly the same. Okay, now I would be remiss to not talk about eye contact when we're talking about types of nonverbal communication. Okay, understanding eye contact will help our students become better nonverbal communicators. Remember how I talked about most of our students with autism focus on the lower 2/3 of the face? A lot is going on in this upper third. So teaching them why eye contact is important, or at least why looking at this upper area is important, is going to help them become a better nonverbal communicator. It also helps with connection. It helps us to connect with others and feel closer, and it helps others feel closer to us. So I explain all of those things when I'm talking about eye contact. The last one that we talked about is physical appearance. I again just kind of briefly touch on this. I explain what physical appearance is and how, sometimes some things in your physical appearance you can change and some things you can't. So we talk about how, when you change, your hair color some things like your height and your weight and your natural hair color are things you cannot change. But you can change things like how you dress and the accessories, how you groom yourself, if you wash your hair, if you cut your nails, that affects what people think about you. So if I come in and my hair's clean and my nails are done, people are going to think I'm a clean person. If I come in and I haven't washed my hair in a week and my nails are long and dirty, that's going to affect how people think of me. Also how, we pick our clothes based on the type of image we want to portray. I, am trying to choose something professional looking as I'm talking to you, and I'm not wearing my workout clothes that I usually wear all day long, because I want you to think of me as a professional and somebody who knows what I'm talking about. So physical appearance is a type of nonverbal communication. So I hope you learned some new things about nonverbal communication. I hope you have a better understanding about what it is, what makes up nonverbal communication. I hope you got some ideas on things you can use to teach your kids how to be better nonverbal communicators. Now, I know that this was a lot of information, and I have created a resource, a teaching guide that I would love for you to have, that walks you through teaching these different types of nonverbal communication. I literally was reading off of it today as I was going over it with you, so you know what is in it. And it's going to give you some words to help you teach. It's going to give you some visuals. It's going to give you a strategy and a place to start, and it's going to help you teach these skills in a really strategic way. So if you're interested in purchasing this from me, there is a link in the description below. Additionally, I have a whole bundle of teaching guides that teach social communication skills. This is included in it, and all of my teaching guides are included in it. So it helps you, it's full of guides that help you teach things like taking someone's perspective, code switching, power relationships, conversation skills, friendship making skills. I have teaching guides to help you teach these skills to your students. So there's a link for that in the description below as well. Thank you again. Thank you for taking your time to spend with me. Thank you for taking the time to learn something new. I hope you found it helpful. If you'd like to keep getting videos like this or knowing when some new ones come out, click subscribe and be a part of our community. Thanks.